Kaiser and I live across the green. Our gang, it is the jolliest that you have ever seen. Oh, we drink a stein.
Construction began on the Sigma Chi chapter house at Purdue University in 1912, and construction was completed early in 1913. And so, on a weekend in September of 2013, the alumni gathered to celebrate with today's undergraduates the 100th anniversary of the house. The celebration began with a reception at the chapter house on Friday evening.
We never bluff, we're game at any fuss. No other gang in college dares to meet us in a muss. So pay your lunch.
The group came together again on Saturday. There was a welcoming desk manned by the co-chairman of the event, Brandon Cortez and Jim Grujink. At noon, there was a luncheon served in a big tent on the front lawn. It was a beautiful day, and everyone was in great spirits.
The storms in our march of glee, our songs like the boom of the sea. We'll stand together, we're true and we'll all...
After lunch, we all convened in the Great Hall. Jeff McKean was the program chairman, and he was the kickoff speaker.
I'll tell you a little story. We actually, we struggled a little bit. We knew our numbers were going to be big, and we struggled with the decision as to whether or not we should be in here or outside. And Keith Kroc actually came up yesterday and said, you know what, I think we need to be outside and all that. And, I hated to say, Keith, that's a really dumb idea. So I didn't do that initially. But with the things we're going to be talking about today, there's no place other than this great hall where we could do it. So we may be a little cozy. Hopefully everybody, we're all amongst friends, and we'll be fine with that. Personally, I think the magic of this house is the great hall. When I think of this house, I visualize, and I know many of you are probably the same way, I visualize the great hall. I met my wife in the great hall. My son, who is a junior in the house, turns 21 in 3 days, so hopefully But what I think is great about the Great Hall and great about Delta Delta Sigma Chi is community and family. And I think the Great Hall helps us in that regard in a lot of respects.
And of course, being the chapter advisor for a number of years, what inspired me for year after year is just the caliber and quality of young men that we continue to bring into this fraternity. And then to see them when they come back and line the balcony and they have young families, it's just remarkable to see how they've grown and continue to live the ideals that we instilled here many, many years ago.
So first question I have for you, is this the greatest house or what? So contrary to what Phil said, we're actually here for three things, okay? So the first one, of course, is to commemorate, the 100th anniversary. George A. building the house in 1912 and 1913. It was launched. So we're gonna celebrate that. We're gonna do that by a lot of brothers telling a few stories. The second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna celebrate the most successful fundraising and renovation in fraternity history, whether it's Sigma Chi on any campus or any fraternity anywhere. And I'll tell you, you don't have to be Chairman Emeritus of the Board of Trustees to realize that this is the greatest house on campus, number one. And number two, my experience of being Grand Council, I had a chance to go to about 150 different chapters, thanks to Meta, who went around to a lot of places, and there's no doubt in my military mind that this is the greatest chapter in the Sigma Chi fraternity and the greatest house anywhere. So we're going to celebrate that, and we're going to celebrate that by a bunch of thank yous. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to torch the mortgage, and that's fun. And I don't know how many of you folks have ever torched a mortgage before, but it's just a fun thing to do. So, and all six have a little pyro in them anyway, if you know that. So, what the hell? That's what we're going to do.
Thanks, Rob. I've got a few pledge brothers out here that would say the first time I walked into this house was the day I was initiated. Not true. And I'm paying all my dues back now as the House Corporation President, trust me. No, obviously the House Corporation, the main thing that we do is take care of the facility. And we know that's, there's a lot of pressure on us to take care of this investment that you guys made, and we really appreciate it. And we really couldn't do it without Butch Brose. Is Brother Brose here someplace?
Not.
It's not? Okay. Well, Butch, if we gave a Heisman Trophy, he wouldn't be the winner. We would just change the name and call it the Butch Brose Trophy. I mean, that guy does so much for the House Corporation and the undergraduate brothers to keep this place in the same condition that we renovated it to, that we owe him a lot. And now we've been trying to, the last 10 years we've been focused on getting this place to the point that it is. And now we're really kind of looking at the brothers and what can we do there. And so we really, the foundation has said they want Sigma Chi to become the preeminent collegiate leadership development organization. And so based on that, we've also been implementing and trying to develop a scholarship program. We now have 3 leadership scholarships, academic scholarships. We have a brotherhood scholarship, which is for financial need, and the George Ade scholarship, which every brother in the house can be awarded and really should be. There's also a couple of national awards, and so our scholarship program is really off to a good start. And but we think that's important to transition from the facility to the guys inside. And any help that you ever want to give to that, there's certainly a place and an area for you to be able to donate to as well.
Thanks, Bart. Yeah, as Mr. Cox said, I am the pro-consul for the House. Greg Burns, who is our consul, was not able to make it tonight. But I am happy to report that the Delta Delta chapter is alive and well. Sigma Chi is represented in all disciplines across campus, and we have brothers leading in prominent organizations, clubs, and philanthropic organizations. Currently, Sigma Chi is one of the leading houses in education. We're top 10 in grades, and we've made it our chapter's goal to break through the threshold of top 5 by the end of the 2013 academic year. Currently, Sigma Chi is one of the leading Greek houses. As Sigma Chi's, we understand the importance of giving back to the community. The active brothers in Sigma Chi are involved in over 110 organizations on campus, whose primary focus is giving back to Purdue and the West Lafayette community. Last year, our house ranked second in the amount of money raised for all Greek houses on campus, only losing by $100 to the first place winners. Sigma Chi's were able to raise over $10,000 for the Riley for Hospital for Kids Foundation. Words cannot describe the gratitude that we feel with all the energy, time, and money that you guys put into the undergraduate chapter. Delta Delta is one of the prominent fraternity houses on campus, and it's a great time to be an active brother here at Delta Delta. I just want to take a moment on behalf of all the active brothers that live in 202 to thank you for all that you do to help ensure that the undergrads have a wonderful place to call home. Thank you.
Class of 55. Sigma Chi was 100 years old the year I graduated. My father was in the class of 21. This house had been built 4 or 5 years. It was a brand new house. My father was first here. There was a fellow a year or 2 older than he was named Myron McKee. I think he was the class of 20. He rigged speakers in this room. At that time, nobody knew anything about radio except dots and dashes, dot, 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 dot. Myron McKee was very into ham radio. Became a good friend of mine, even though a generation older, because I got into ham radio. He rigged speakers and played WBAA in this room, and the brothers thought that he was playing tricks somehow from Victrola, some way, because they didn't know that WBAA had been on the air very briefly. And so you can imagine that in this room. We all take it for granted. Think what we take for granted today in communications.
Celebrating the 100th year of this house, and George Ade put this all together to create this house right here, so it is fitting that we see the enthusiasm of the letter in which he wrote. And so just a part of it, do you realize that the Phi Delts at Purdue, along with the Phi Psis, Delta Taus, Betas, and all other standard fraternities, live in large, comfortable homes, while our kid brothers are struggling along in a tumble-down shack. If we, with our 35 years of honorable history and long roster of distinguished alumni, cannot compete with these newcomers, we should put up our shutters and go jump into the Wabash River. And today, as an undergrad living in this house, I think he would be smiling down at those who didn't just pay for a new house, wanted the same experience for those who are going through the house currently, and paid for a house more expensive, but to keep it the same. And as an undergrad, our experience wouldn't be the same without that. So this is awesome, and on behalf of the house, thank you so much.
It's a delight to be back, and this is my first time to see what's happened. And it's truly remarkable to walk into this place and see the house better than it was, and be able to walk to that balcony and look down on the Great Hall and see it as we remember it and as we cherished it. It is really a remarkable story to have this house here and in all its glory. And also, I think it's brilliant that there is a fund to keep the house up to snuff year by year by year. So we all must be a part of that, and certainly that would be one of my pledges that I'll make in the future, to be sure that this remains as you gave it to us. Thank you all who participated in this event. Memories. I was here from 40 to 43. Actually, I'm the class of 44, but we had a speed-up program during the war. When we came back from Christmas vacation in 1940, it was announced that we were going to go to school year-round, and that's what we did. By the time I left Purdue in 1943, the house was diminished. It was a year of transition. People were being drafted and leaving, and at the same time, new faces were appearing in Navy uniform, Army uniform, because it was transitioning to a training college from a regular Purdue undergraduate setup. I was inducted into the service during the time that I was in the chapter. And by that time, the house had been taken over by the Army, and we were living over on Waldron. And I think, Scott, you're going to tell that story. The Army took over a number of houses on the campus. First they took over Cary Hall, and then they began taking over various houses as they needed extra room to house the Army and the Navy and the Marines that were coming to the campus for training.
Fitting, because I follow Al Mackey. He was my big brother. A few years ago, he sent us a picture. All the people that were in the Waldron chapter house. And here it is. People in the back can't see it. That's right, you can come up later. But in there were about 25 of us. We moved over there, and it was an old house on Waldron Street. It's since been torn down. We had a dirt basement. We had to have a chapter room. So the pledges got a chance, and actually the freshmen, to create a chapter room in the basement, a dirt basement. Bob Esch, one of the brothers in here, his father was a contractor in Cleveland, came visiting us and pointed out that if we kept up our project of digging out the basement, the house would fall in. So you know what? We stopped. And I was kind of glad anyway, it was hard work. But this is something that Al sent to all of us, and I've been talking with Al a little while ago. He didn't remember to bring his copy. He couldn't find it. You know what I mean? So this will go into the archives as well as keeping track of, and that's what's going to happen. We returned back to the house after the Army moved out. We were the only fraternity that did this, by the way. The rest of them bunched up as best they could, but it took the Sigma guys to do the right thing.
We were lucky enough to have, besides my grandson, the best McGeester of all times. He instilled in us something that was indescribable to this day. But Kenny Kraft, right there, #1 McGeester.
Thank you, Dad.
And I can't tell you, out of that group of 14 people, how many people were best man at one wedding and best man at the other's wedding, and how close we all were. And to this day, after 5 years, we celebrated our first anniversary of our pledge class at Jim and Shirley Dora's place down in what part of Indiana was that? And we celebrated that. And I want to tell you folks, every year since then, every 3 to 5 years since then, we have had a pledge class reunion of the Delta Delta Sigma Chi's since 1958.
Class of '68, kind of in the middle of this group and proud to be there. The 60s were a great time at the house, some of the great houses. But one thing I want to do is kind of look back and look forward. One of my kind of hobbies now is to collect George Ade and John McCutcheon memorabilia off eBay. And there's some awesome stuff out there. If you guys haven't gone back and read some of George Ade's books, they're dated, but what a wit, what a humor. The John T. McCutcheon cartoons, I'm sure you've all seen Indian Summer, it's upstairs, but what a mind, what an insight into the world that he was living in. Sorry, I get choked up too.
Okay, this is a cold one. I'm not known for a lot of words at times. There's a lot of things that happened in the house over the years when I was active and whatnot that I didn't know had happened because I was so seriously studying. That was for your benefit, Whitney. There are a lot of other things that happened that I don't remember for other reasons.
Boy, I'm humbled to be part of this crew. Amazing. So I represent the class of '83. I graduated in '82. There was 5 of us sophomores that were part of that, and I thought we had organization, but my goodness, the '73 guys, unbelievable. We didn't have a song, did we, guys? We had the Large Dark Aardvark. Do you remember that song? We sang that last night at Bruno's. That was a big hit. It's great to get together, and we have been getting together too. I've got to point out Dave Westerbeck as our glue kind of post-graduation, and I would encourage all the younger guys to pick a pledge class president for life and just have that person just help you keep organized, because he's done that for us, and it's really been wonderful. But a couple points, and then I'll just tell a funny story. I think it's funny. One is that I walked in these halls as a sophomore. I didn't even know what a fraternity was, coming from Jamestown, New York. Parents didn't go to college. And Will Lyles and John Pierce, who I think are both here, we were involved in a campus organization called Student Concert Committee, and they said, why don't you come over and check this out? And I came in and met the guys, and I said, boy, this is where I want to be. And Todd Kaminsky is, I think, around here too. Helped stand up so I didn't get a ball, and I got accepted here. So I thank you for that, Todd. So I'm so proud to be here.
Well, we'll try to keep it clean. I'm J. Andrew, Delta 98. I'm a townie, so I'm from Lafayette, Indiana. Let's hear it for the townies here. Let's not get any hits. Let's hear it for the townies. We got to represent every now and then. So I've been seeing this place for years. Let me back up real quick. Current chapter advisor. So great to hear the alumni talking, but what the hell? I'm going to be running damage control tomorrow at chapter saying we can't do this, no ball games, we're not painting any towers, and we're not going to do this, and we can't do that. Just because they had fun doing it doesn't mean we can. So, thank you, but what the hell? So, again, in kind of course of trying to keep it clean, you know, being a townie and kind of seeing everything happen over the years, driving by the fraternity houses, and being a young high school guy, you always wanted to get on the list, and you always wanted to get in, you always wanted to go to the party. But what the hell for? Because you weren't going to know anybody anyway, but by God, it would have been cool. This was a place you could never get into. So being a townie, you're kind of like, that must be one hell of a party going on in there. I'm going to do what I can to get in. So, you know, came through a couple times. I've got the great pleasure. My dad is Epsilon Omega Sigma Chi, Ball State. So I was thinking, hey, that'll be the shoe. Hell no, it wasn't. My head was on the chopping block from the get-go. So had a lot of proving to do, a lot of living up to do, and luckily I was able to make it. Don't know how the hell I did. Maybe it was some of the townies that were in the house, something like that. But either way, it worked out, and very, very happy to be here.
And to start and to base this campaign on leadership, scholarship, and brotherhood. And you know, the way I describe Bernie, Jim, and Harold is these are three guys you can never say no to, but you can always count on. So let's give a big welcome and thank you to Bernie Surgisgetter, Jim Dora, and Harold Forrest. Come on.
Welcome this afternoon to one of the most storied and honored places in all of Greek college life. Delta Delta of Sigma Chi is a special place, a source of hopes and dreams and possibilities, leadership training, and a crucible of friendships, which I do believe are eternal. 10 years ago, we began in earnest a process with only one objective. That objective was to preserve and advance our home here at 202 Littleton Street. Just how the last 10 years have allowed us to achieve that objective is a story of which you could write a novel. Not fiction, but suspenseful truth. And this book has a very, very happy ending. You know, through history, there are some really notable historic duos that have made great things possible and whose work is legendary. Among them, of course, are Ade and McCutcheon, Laurel and Hardy, Sonny and Cher, George and Ira, Batman and Robin, Rogers and Hammerstein, Eisenhower and Churchill. And of course, there is Jim Dora and Bernie Surgisgetter. Each of them one part good cop, one part bad cop. But no more effective duo have I ever seen. But they're always friends and brothers, and without whose skills, efforts, and affection we would likely not be here today. It was my very good fortune to fall into a team with them and nearly 1,000 of our Delta Delta brothers to invest in this great legacy of a fraternity home. And I think we call it a fraternity house too easily. It is a fraternity home. And I don't know about you, but if there's anything that gets a hair up on the back of my neck, is when someone calls it a frat house. It just makes me mad as hell. It's because they don't know. They can't feel because they've not been. But it's your home to which you can return anytime, where we can come as individuals or as small groups or as a class or as a throng, to rekindle our friendships, our hopes, and the dreams of our youth. You know, our space shuttle brothers could come in and talk to us about single point failure modes. That's the one thing that can break on a machine which doesn't allow it to complete its purpose. Well, the journey of bringing this facility through the processes of the last 10 years had more than a few single point failure modes that we got past. There's some incredible stories of success, a lot of sweat, to start naming names, whether it's your wallet or your hours or whatever you were able to put into connection. And starting to do that, we'd miss someone, and that wouldn't be fair. But I'll tell you, there are more stories than you can imagine. And we lived a lot of them, Jim and Bernie and I did. And it is to their credit as pledge brothers, as soulmates, and his dedication to this wonderful cause that we call our home at 202 Littleton Street. I would like to ask brother and friend Jim Dora to come up and recall just a few things that happened.
Harold, how many trips did you make from Columbus, Ohio?
Indiana.
Columbus, Indiana, God, what a terrible slip. To meet with architects, first of all, almost constantly, and then contractors who were executing this great endeavor. This guy is incredible. I don't know how many days he spent away from Debbie and away from his business to create what has been created here. The many innovations and the design procedures that you put in, this thing was really complicated because this was a terrible old building, not built with any of the current day construction methods. And this is the guy that dealt with that and dealt with it obviously very successfully. A century ago, this chapter house, the first one on Purdue's campus, was no doubt the finest one in the country. That was in 1913. But the next 90 years were not kind to this old place, and you've heard stories today of some of the unkindness that was practiced here. So it was homecoming 10 years ago. Bernie and I were here together, and you independently went through the house. Bernie and I went through the house, and that night there were cocktails at whatever the restaurant was. We must do something. We have an obligation to do something. And do something we did, but it took a lot of help. Thank you, everyone who were part of making this endeavor a success. I'm reluctant to call out names because we'd overlook far too many people. But thank you to our era leaders, our class leaders, our committee members, and donors primarily. Thank you very much. You made this happen. Here are some numbers. We spent $7.3 million in renovating a fraternity house. We collected all but $30,000 of that, and Bart Burrell and the House Corporation thankfully covered that. So we are debt-free. Thank you. The alumni participation was most impressive. We collected all but, the Greek alumni typically give 25%, have a 25% donation rate. Sigma Chi chapters, of course, are better than that. They have a 37% donation rate. Delta Delta had 60% of the living brothers contribute to this campaign. Thank you all. We truly do have a wonderful, special band of brothers. Now, I give you my brother and best friend, and we will introduce him since music has been introduced earlier today. We'll introduce him with a song. There was a little bird, no bigger than a turd, sitting on the telegraph pole. He stuck out his neck and he shit about a peck as he puckered up his little Surge's cutter.
Oh, thanks so much, Jim. We used to have song night every Friday night here at the house. So here I was in my formative years, and for 3.5 years, we had 80 guys in the dining room singing that song and made it every Friday night. And in fact, identifying me as an asshole. Years after we were married, Mary learned of this, and she looked at me very seriously and she says, "Now I understand."
Not true. Not true.
It's been a remarkable journey, and making it with my dearest friend Jim and with Harold, who we were fortunate enough to meet and become friends with as a result of this project. It was a great journey, but it wouldn't have been possible without so much participation from the Delta alums. I would like to just mention a few names of people who are here who got us started and really gave us the confidence we could do this, and in addition to Harold and Jim, who gave generously of their financial resources. Keith Kropp, where's Keith? Keith, God bless you. Rick Smith, Scott Haynes, Al Menke, Ken Kraft, Ron Carpinella, Mark Sand, Mark Lester, Mark Carlson, Bob Cayley, Tim Palmer, all gave us that corpus right at the start that gave us the confidence. And just a couple of quick questions, stories about things that happened. There are too many to go into, but a couple. I saw Rick Smith earlier outside. I remember it was, I think, homecoming of 2005 when we were going to go public with this thing, and Rick had pledged $100,000. Over 5 years was what most of the pledges were. And so Jim and Rick were standing right here in the game room next to the ping pong table. And Rick said, "Well, I want to pay my pledge." And he got out his little checkbook. We all have these little checkbooks. And standing there in the game room, he wrote out a check for $100,000 and handed it to Jim. So that was a thank you, Rick.
What did Jim do with it?
Kept it carefully. Rachel.
Jim and I agreed that this story would never be told, but our beloved McGeester, Ken Kraft, and I were standing over there in the corner where the piano used to be last night at the nice reception we had. And he was kind enough to invite Jim and Shirley and Mary and me to his beautiful place at Sanibel Island. And he had pledged $50,000. And so we went up there, and I think it was in the spring of '05, whatever, and we just had a marvelous time. He took us out in this beautiful boat. We went to Yucep Island, where he was a member of the yacht club there. I mean, we just had a marvelous time. On the way back in our car, going down 41 back to Marco Island, I said to Jim, because Harold's work meant that instead of $6 million, we had to raise $7.4 million. So I said to Jim, I think Ken's good for another 50,000. And Jim said, "I think so too." And by God, he was good for it. And the consul's room is named for Kenneth H. Kraft Jr. Thank you, Jim. Well, George A. graduated in 1887, and 3 years later, in June of 1890, he went to work as a reporter for the Morning News in Chicago. At the time, Daniel Burnham was in Chicago doing the architectural planning for the Columbia Exposition of 1893, and also for the design of Chicago's lakefront. Burnham was a visionary and undoubtedly influenced Ade's thinking and approach. Harold, Jim, and I believe that the initial drawings for the Delta Delta Chapter House reflected that influence. Daniel Burnham said this: "Make no little plans. They don't have the magic to stir men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble logical diagram once recorded will never die, but long after we are gone will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency. Think big." The chapter house renovation was approached with that same vision. And you, our donors, enabled that vision to become a reality. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We had a mortgage with First Source Bank in Lafayette to cover the renovation expenses until all the pledges were paid, which happened a week before our event. It was with great pleasure that we watched the mortgage document go up in flames in the fireplace. Saturday evening, the Boilermakers played the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame at Ross-Ade Stadium. It was a good game, and it was a lot of fun watching it with Delta Delta brothers and sweethearts. Purdue led most of the game, with Notre Dame finally winning by 1 touchdown. Thank you for watching. Hail Purdue, and very proud to be a Sigma Chi.
Dreams is the sweetest girl of all the girls I know. Sweet, sweet poet, like a rainbow trail, fades in the sweet one of sin.